Hello and welcome to the Ultimate Hiring Funnel series. Today is episode 1. I'm going to talk quickly about what this entire series is about, and then I'll get to today's episode. So look, it is no secret that hiring is hard, really hard, especially in our construction and trades industries. Labor shortages are a real thing. And yes, perhaps millennials and Gen Z'ers aren't as gritty as older generations may have been. And also, yes, the government has paid a bunch of people to stay at home for over a year and a half, leading to a super lethargic workforce. We get it. But look, it is what it is, and none of this stuff you can do much about. What you can do, though, is build the best hiring funnel in your market, and that is exactly what the next 6 episodes are going to be all about. Over the coming weeks, we're going to explain in plain English how you can think like a marketer and start to build an employee brand that attracts top talent towards your company. We'll talk a lot about how to write job postings that get the highest performers excited to apply. We'll talk about how to get actively recruiting instead of passively waiting. And we'll talk about how to start practicing behavioral interviewing so that you can delve into an applicant's previous behavior, predict their future performance, and make better choices on your people. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff too. This is going to be a 6-part series. So episode 1, which is today, is going to be on ideal candidate profiling. Episode 2, which will be next week, will be focused on how to write a job posting that sells your company as an amazing place to work. Episode 3, we're going to dig deep into promotion and active recruitment tactics. So as many people as possible see that great job posting that you wrote and apply. Episode 4 is going to be all about conversion calls. So that's that first phone call that you would make to an applicant after they've applied, where you set up an interview, you get to know them, or maybe actually move on. Episode 5, after that, this is going to be a deep dive on behavioral interviewing. So when you sit down with a candidate, we want to break down that interview process, what questions you should ask, how to probe, how to score people. Episode 6, the finale, this is going to be on selection and expectation setting. So how do you make those super tough decisions late in the recruitment process and then set up that new team member for success over the long haul? As always, I will be joined by my co-host Igor, and we have an onslaught of amazing new guests throughout this series. Honestly, it doesn't matter whether you are a seasoned pro or you just started your business this year. If you're in landscaping, painting, construction, roofing, drywall, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, junk removal, property maintenance, or any home service company, and you want to build your dream team, this series is for you. Today is episode 1, and we couldn't be more excited to launch this series with our favorite recruiter, Josianne Gaudette. Josianne runs Crew HR here in Vancouver. She has a master's in HR, and over her extensive 18-year career, she's been involved in the hiring of over 600 roles for her huge book of clients. We here at Breakthrough Academy, we've also worked with her a ton over the years, and we can honestly vouch for her. She is a true expert in all things recruitment, selection, onboarding, conflict management, employment law, headhunting, all of it. In today's episode, she teaches us how to make an ideal candidate profile, which is the primary building block for any hiring funnel. Think about it, right? Like, you can't hire the right person if you don't know exactly what you're looking for in the first place. And while that might seem kind of obvious, a lot of people mess this up. So Josianne explains in no uncertain terms how you can gain tremendous clarity about who you want and then how to leverage that clarity throughout the rest of your hiring funnel. I really hope you enjoy it.
You're watching Contractor Evolution, where we unpack the systems, tactics, and skills you need to take your fast-growing contracting business to the next level.
You're here to learn what it takes to scale up, work less, and increase profitability. You've come to the right place.
Stay tuned to learn what separates the new breed of contractor from the old school, and welcome to your ultimate guide on the business of contracting.
Hey, just before we jump into things, I wanted to let you know you can get the free resources that we talk about in this episode in the show description. So hit pause right now, go download them, and they'll be waiting in your inbox by the time we finish this episode. Josianne, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Benji.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you.
Likewise.
So I want to start with A simple question. Just tell us, what is an ideal candidate profile?
So an ideal candidate profile is really like a collection of information that will inform your recruitment decisions. So basically, you can think about it like building an avatar, so in a video game, so that perfect character, that perfect person that's going to fill your position and answer the needs that you're looking for.
Like those games at the beginning when you got to actually like decide what characteristics they have. I want it to have like this much speed, this much strength, this much intelligence. Some games they have like magic skills, and then you go and play the rest of the game with that character. That's what you're talking about when you say an avatar.
Exactly. And I love the way you're referring to the skills. So it's almost like the face of the character would be, slightly blurry because you don't exactly know who it's going to be,
right?
But you know what you're looking for in terms of skills and abilities.
Cool. So it is like an actual document that you would write out then.
Exactly. So the more precise you can be, the most chances you have to reach your goal and actually find what you're looking for.
Okay. And another good analogy for this, guys, is it is like planning, right? We plan a ton of stuff in business, right? You should be doing an annual business plan. There's a sales plan you're making. There's a production plan. It's no different. Like, a lot of people will just roll right into a recruiting process. This is kind of like that fundamental, that groundwork that you do to figure out like who are we going to go and look for.
From your experience, Josianne, and Igor, chime in whenever you want, like, why are these so important? Why are they so fundamental? Why is it the first step of any good recruiting process?
So I was kind of joking earlier and referring to determining your ideal candidate profile just as it is when you're shopping for a couch and you go to the store and you want to make sure that you go to the store with the layout of your living room and you know your measurements.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just going to be shopping for looks, maybe fabrics, but you're not going to be able to make that decision in the end because it's a big purchase and you don't know if it's going to fit in your house. So
you might actually make the decision,
yeah,
which we've probably all done. You go spend like $2,500 on this really cool couch that you fell in love with when you walked in the showroom, and the salesman, closed you, and then you go home and you're like, this thing doesn't work with the room at all. It's too big, or it's the wrong color. That's even worse. So it's a planning document that helps you think through who you want on the team before you go out and look for them. And I wonder if you could speak to the flip side of this, like, what do we risk having happen if we don't build one of these?
So if you don't build one of these, you're lacking clarity around the needs of the position, so what this person would actually be doing within the organization. You will lack clarity in terms of the skills and the abilities that you're looking for, and you just won't have a clear picture going into the recruitment process. So as a result, you might be spinning your wheels a little bit when you're screening resumes, when you're actually meeting people, your interview questions will not be targeted and won't be able to allow you to measure what you want to measure. And in the end, you just may not recruit the best person. And then, as we know, there's a huge cost for bad recruitment.
That actually happens all the time. The point you just made about the interviewing step, because what I hear a lot from our members and certainly Breakthrough Academy prospects when I speak with them, and we're talking about interviewing, is it's actually not uncommon for people to sit down for an interview with someone and kind of like freeze up when they realize this is a meeting that they're leading, and they don't even know what questions to ask. And the reason they don't know that is because they don't know who they're looking for in the first place. And so what sort of ends up happening is you get to know them on a personal level, you banter a bit, you talk about your company, and then you go, well, they seemed solid. Like, well, let's give them a shot. Like, that's sort of that's the pitfall that I think can end up happening when this step gets skipped.
Exactly. And this person may be awesome to go for a beer with because you had a great conversation, but that doesn't mean it's exactly what you're looking for.
Igor, anything to add as far as like things that might happen if we skip this?
Yeah, totally. I think there's a huge risk of not having a ton of clarity on the role itself. A lot of people, I find, they don't think through like the why I'm doing this, right? You'll know that okay, well, I should have a production manager, or I should have a project manager, I should have an office admin. But those words are pretty general. Like an office admin or an office manager
can mean different things.
A ton of different things, right?
Yeah.
So to think through, like, what is it that I'm looking for is super important, right? And it's totally in the context of your business, the way that you've built it, the current state of development, like where you're at in the growth and development of your company. It's based on your style as a leader and your strengths and your weaknesses, and really asking that question, like, why am I adding this position, right? So actually just this morning, I was working on some organizational structure stuff, and when you visually look at your org structure, and you've got these, we call them in the software, actually, they're called nodes, right? Where you basically hit the plus button and you add a node or a position. Why are you adding that role, the position, the node, whatever you want to call it, right? But you're effectively complicating your org structure by adding every single one. And you better have a really good justification of, why am I doing that?
And I think that reason needs to be better defined than, well, because we're really busy right now.
Totally. And that's a lot of why it comes
And it needs
from.
to be better than, well, because like my buddy said that he hired an office manager and it really helped him.
Totally.
It's got to be more personal to your own business, what it needs, all that stuff.
Exactly.
So,
and also on that note, like, I think a really good question to ask yourself is, what is the root problem you're trying to solve by adding and injecting this role into your org structure? So that's a huge part of this kind of groundwork thought that I think needs to go in, that, as Josie said, will add so much clarity long term for you. And if you don't do it, you are at massive risk of not nailing it, like in the whole recruiting process, and ending up with the wrong person in the wrong type of role, and a lot of things can go wrong.
Exactly. And I think too, when you do that exercise, especially when you're adding a position to your org structure, is you're going to find out, do we have overlap in terms of responsibilities? And I think that's very interesting to find out before you get the person in the role, and then you realize that you have three other people in the company doing similar things, or too much overlap.
Yep, exactly.
Building an ideal candidate profile, I think it's also important. I want to highlight, this is something that helps you with the longevity of the hire rather than the quickness of you finding the hire. So if you're in a huge rush to just get a warm body tomorrow, this would be something that, I think a lot of people obviously skip. They're like, it's an extra step. I don't have the time. I just need someone. I suppose that makes sense in a few very, very rare business cases. But if you're truly interested in building an organization, a team, a culture, you do need people for the long haul. And this is about figuring out who's going to fit for that longer term journey. Because if you just need a warm body, go throw up an ad on Craigslist and cross your fingers and you'll get one. But this is a longer term investment in your team. That's why we build one. Okay.
Yeah. And sorry, Benji, can I just ask one really quick question?
Sure.
If we're doing this properly, how long does it take? Because I totally hear what you're saying, that it is an additional step, but I don't think this is something that's going to take you like that you're going to spend a whole week doing. I would argue this is like a really focused 3 to 4 hour exercise.
Exactly. And it may require, and I would strongly encourage it, conversations with different team members.
Totally.
Especially if you have business partners, to make sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, who do we want? Yeah.
Exactly. So 3 hours, 4 hours max, I think that's, you can do it easily.
Yeah, exactly. So Benji, to your point, yes, it's an extra step. And I think a lot of listeners are, I'm super busy already. Why am I ejecting an extra thing? But I would argue this is like a super high ROI, 3 or 4 hours.
And if if you ask our BTA members who have done this, who have taken those 3 or 4 hours, it pays itself back in dividends time and time again.
Totally.
So, okay, we did a little bit of thinking through like the actual nuts and bolts of what's included in an ideal candidate profile. I want to go through this framework with you two, and just kind of add your thoughts to each of these pieces and why they need to be included in one of these ideal candidate profiles. So the first thing on a lot of them should be company values. Why do those belong at the top of an ideal candidate profile?
So they should be at the foundation of everything we do, especially anything that touches on human resources. Company values need to be on the document. It's just about, again, having the clarity about what they are in terms of not just stating the words, but also adding the definitions, because some of these words will come back in the document when we're drafting what it is that we're looking for. And it really ties into personal values of the person that we'll be seeking.
So that's an important point. The company values on this profile shouldn't just be like integrity, quality, trust, one words. It's like quality over quantity, and then a few phrases on the definition of what that value means to the organization.
Always, always.
Love it. The next thing on this profile is the mission or the why. And that was, I think, to your point earlier, Igor, that's like thinking through what problem are we trying to solve? Why are we adding this person to the organization?
Yeah, like you have to be able to justify it to yourself. And a way that I like to think of this sometimes, if I as a leader was reporting to some sort of board of directors that was grilling me on like, why are we complicating the org structure? Why are we approving this additional payroll spend? Like, how am I going to justify why I want to add this role?
Right. And most of our contractors don't have a board of directors that they're reporting to, but they should almost put themselves in that situation when thinking through it.
Yeah, totally. Right. And it's, I just find it always so fascinating how complex a business can get over time, right? As you start to, you're diving into your sales org is getting more complex. Maybe you're adding a marketing component to your business, right? So like yesterday, after like a 5-month selection process, we finally selected the candidate for a role on the marketing team that we called a marketing operations specialist, right? And 3 years ago, I couldn't even tell you what that means. But over time, as the organizational structure got more complicated, we realized, wow, there's this person that has to manage the actual marketing campaigns and the landing pages and the email communications and all of these things. And we're like, holy crap, this is a role, right? But I really put a lot of thought into like, can I justify the complication in the org structure and the extra overhead and all this stuff? But I'm like, yeah, we are doing a lot of this. Like email communications with prospects are a real thing. Landing pages for different offers are a real thing. The way that we structure these campaigns and all this kind of stuff, right? So it is interesting as your business grows and becomes more complex, you will find new things like, holy man, we need a new person for this. But you have to think through it and make sure that, yes, this does make sense. A good analogy is if you had to defend it to a board of directors, could you?
So that's the why. Number 3 in one of these ideal candidate profiles would be the deliverables and accountabilities. So what are those and why do they belong here?
So that's the expectations for the role. So what will this person be contributing to your company, and what will they accomplish in the first 6 months, the first few years? It doesn't have to be complicated, and really this should be top of mind for any business owners, is by adding this person or by adding this position, these 5 buckets will be taken care of, or these 5 goals will be accomplished.
And I think an important way to frame those when you're making one of these is it should be pretty results focused. These are the results that this person is going to deliver to us, the organization, in order to create an ROI. Because these people cost money. Every single role you bring on is payroll. It's insurance, it's perhaps benefits. If you're going to do that, what are the results that they deliver to the organization to make it worth that expenditure? Yeah,
100%. And a good example of this is like if you're looking at a salesperson, you're looking at a production manager, right? If you are adding a role of a production manager that needs to oversee production of, let's say, $2 million in roofing revenue, and you're doing it at a 35% margin, they're adding $700,000 in gross margin to the organization. And the question is, can you now mathematically, based on your numbers, justify how that you now have an ROI on that person? So I'm not looking at them as a cost. They are a revenue driver that has an ROI, just like any other asset, just like an excavator. Right.
But if you don't frame it that way, if you don't look at it through that lens, that concept of an ROI generating asset is totally lost on you. Totally. It's just overhead.
Exactly.
So I think that's a really important piece. Okay, next is preferences and abilities. So I think that we should actually define these for listeners. What do we mean by preferences and abilities?
So every person I think comes with natural pre-wiring for certain traits. And yes, absolutely, you're developing your people over time, you're training. But I mean, just if you think about it within yourself, and Benji, I could be talking to you, Josianne, I could be talking to you, or the listener, just think about yourself. You have a certain natural level of, let's just say, tenacity to go drive towards results, no matter how hard it gets, how gritty you have to be. You get it done no matter what. And I'm sure you can think of people in your life where you're like, this person isn't so, or maybe you're not so. I don't know, right? But there's a natural pre-wiring there. Some people are very, very goal-oriented, just naturally. They're like a pit bull that will just bite in and not let go until it's done. And some people aren't like that. You can train them for years, right, and you will never instill that. And leading them towards it is, I like the analogy, you're kind of like pushing this like wet noodle and it'll just like it's not going, right? So some people have certain, there are these natural, we call them preferences, or there's another subset that are natural abilities that some people just do or don't have. Trying to get you, my friend, to be super precise is going to be an uphill battle, right?
It's gotten better.
It's gotten slowly.
It's gotten better.
So, but anyway, that's the thing, right? So you got to think through in this role, who am I looking for? Like, does this person need to be highly goal-oriented naturally and have that deeply ingrained in them? Is that important or not? Do they need to be super precise? Do they need to have a really strong natural ability to manage stress? Because if that's important and you hire someone who is very emotional naturally and has high oscillations of ups and downs, again, that's going to be an uphill battle to fight. So the question is like, what is and isn't important? If I'm hiring an office administrator, do I need them to be super goal-oriented? No. But if I'm hiring a sales manager, that's pretty important, right? So that's an important one. And Benji, I believe we have a pretty good handout for that, right, in the downloads.
Yeah, I mean, this episode, just because it's a part of this Ultimate Hiring Funnel series, is going to have a whole bunch of resources. One of them will be our preferences and accountabilities definitions.
Preferences and abilities.
When you read through it, you'll see it's very, very intuitive, and you'll kind of see how this connects to the overall hiring process. Josianne, before I move on for that, I just want to see if you have any other thoughts on just preferences and abilities at this stage in the funnel.
Yeah, absolutely. Because people may be wondering, well, where is that information coming from? So some companies have psychology tests maybe that they're using, or personality testing. So this information may live in there. You may have already pre-established it of what is important, what are those abilities that may be across the organization, or it may live in a job description. So maybe these are words that come back time and time again in the job description, or maybe it's something that you do from scratch for each and every role, like Igor was talking about, really broke it down for an office manager versus a project manager, or maybe a construction worker.
Yeah. And so if you're listening to this and you've not thought through this stuff previously for roles, what I really suggest you do is you grab this download, the link will be in the show notes, and look at the next role that you're hiring for, and read through the definition of each one of these preferences and abilities that is on this document you'll download, and just
you'll get it
think
immediately.
Through. Yeah, it'll make a lot of sense, right? Like if you are hiring for a role that's going to deal with a lot of obstacles and challenges, like a production manager or a project manager, where they're going to have to deal with customer issues and supply chain issues and staff quitting, but they're going to have to keep punching forward. A natural ability to stay level-headed in pursuit of a goal, which we call fundamental, is really important, right? But that'll make sense right away in the definition. So again, if you're thinking through this stuff, or you're hearing about this kind of stuff for the first time, grab a hold of that download and think through it in the context of the next role you're going to hire for.
Yeah, and I just one last point on that. You've probably picked this up from Josianne and Igor already, but these preferences and abilities, these are baked in traits. These are not things that you can train. They're not really things that you can change. You might be able to make a little bit improvement to them maybe over time, but by and large, people are the way they are, and these 10 ways of thinking about it will give you a nice framework to follow. So that's the preferences and abilities section. The other thing that's on here are skill sets and then experience needed. How should we go about thinking through that when we're building one of these, Josianne?
So I would encourage people to look at other job postings that are out there. So it's easy to just do a quick LinkedIn or Indeed search with similar titles and just see what level of experience maybe competitors are requiring for a specific position. Or maybe you already know within your company, maybe there was someone previously in the role and they had, I don't know, a bachelor's degree and 3 years of experience in administration. So you know that's already filling or fulfilling the expectations for the role. So really getting that clarity of, is it really important at that level of education? If yes, making sure, you're specifying the field and same with the experience. So the number of years, what type of environment. So maybe if it's a fast-paced environment and that's important to you, make sure you add that in there as well.
Cool.
I think a lot of this also is dependent on how much you are willing to and are you're prepared to and realistically have the time to train as well, right? Because if your budgets are tighter, for instance, you can hire someone more junior, like an administrative clerk, let's say, but then you are now teaching them how to use QuickBooks or your CRM or whatever. Or you might be looking at your schedule and what's going on in your organization and say, like, this person needs to come in having managed a robust CRM with QuickBooks, with an automated time tracking software and configure and just knows all this stuff. So you have to balance your budget along with what you're reasonably prepared to. And I think you need to be pretty honest with yourself. I know in our industry, people are busy and you have to be honest with how much training and development and ongoing coaching, not just in the first 2 weeks, but for over the whole year, the first year you're going to be able to support.
This skills and experience section, I think is also kind of like widely debated in construction and trades. Like you'll hear a lot of people say at conferences like, well, just, hire on personality and train for skill. Like it doesn't really matter. And I think that's good advice in some settings, but then there's others where that maybe doesn't apply. Like a skilled carpenter is a skilled carpenter. Like have they been to school? Do they have their tickets? Do they have the experience? They do or they don't. That role is not one where, that overly simplified advice works. But then there's other aspects where there's other times where you'll see someone that's wanting to bring on, let's say like a new landscape maintenance technician for their business. And, the ideal candidate profile is like insisting that they need to have 3 years of previous experience and they've been to, they've been to horticultural school. And it's like, well, do they really? Like, could you actually take someone that's like maybe just a couple years out of high school and train them on this stuff? And in my opinion, you probably could, depending on the complexity of the organization. But I think this skill sets and experience needed one is something to really think about. Don't overdo it and then really shrink the pool of candidates that you can select from.
That's exactly it, yeah.
But don't underdo it and sort of like get somebody super green in a really important managerial position either.
Or like you're honest with yourself and you're like, man, I really don't know how office functions work.
Totally.
Like I'm so good at sales and I can drive sales teams and I can bring in $3.5 million a year in sales. But like the time tracking thing, the invoicing, the CRM management, QuickBooks, I never even logged in.
Yeah.
And just to think you're going to hire someone and train them on all that stuff, it ain't going to happen.
So that's an example of where you do want someone more plug and play. They might cost a little bit more money. That's on one extreme.
What you mentioned with the landscape maintenance might be on the other extreme. Yeah. Maybe sometimes it's in the middle, but you got to be honest with yourself where reality is for you.
Okay, last one on the profile is we call it an employee profile based on past employees. What does that mean, Josianne?
So that would be thinking back of employees that worked in your company or they're potentially still working with you. So really thinking of, bringing back almost that memory. Like if you close your eyes and you see, their faces and remembering why was this person so great, and breaking it down in terms of their qualities or something special that they brought to the organization and why that was so important. So you could think back of a project manager that was super organized, very much, paying attention to detail, following up. And so, maybe his name is Paul. So, you'd write that down, attention to detail, really organized, and why it's it's so important because this position is dealing with an insane number of projects and there's follow-up needed. This person needs to be client-facing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You can learn a lot about what you need in the future from what you've had already.
Yeah.
Would it make sense to even reflect on people that maybe weren't successful in the role in the past and think about why they weren't? Like, can you find the gaps that way too?
Absolutely. I think the danger with that is you don't want to think of things that didn't work out and then try to do the exact opposite. So I see lots of clients doing that. They said, oh yeah, this person didn't work out because they were like this, so I'm going to recruit the exact opposite. And that can really backfire on you as well.
Overcorrect.
Exactly.
Yeah. And guys, this stuff really does work. Like Josie, you and I can think back to situations. I mean, when you look at a couple roles that you and I have collaborated on in designing the ideal candidate profile. So our latest sales coordinator, who I think you know and have recruited, we based that whole profile on someone that was in our organization, Caitlin, right before, and it's unbelievable how similar they are.
Yeah.
In their traits. We're actually she's just down the hall from me in the office, and I see her daily. It's unbelievable how similar they are. It's really, really cool, right? And this stuff really does work, right? When you base it on somebody you know. And one big point I want to bring up, Benji, you called it in here, a profile based on other people in the organization. Actually, I would say they don't need to be in the organization. They can work for a competitor. They can work for some other company that's completely unrelated and not even in your industry. Like Josie, you remember we went for coffee, right, with someone that I knew in another organization.
Absolutely.
And the person that we hired for that role was unbelievably similar to that person. This stuff really does work when you can just, as Josie said, close your eyes and think about that person. Maybe you even go meet with them to understand kind of a bit more of what they're like. It really helps in forming that ideal candidate profile and designing the entire recruitment process towards that. It's very real.
And I think if you want to bring in even more diversity in your planning, it's always great to think of employees, but like you said, people in your network and totally. Really like expand it to think of a typical week. So the coffee shop you go to, so the barista that you interact with on a daily basis. There's maybe that person at the bank that's awesome that you see on a weekly basis when you do your deposit.
Totally. Unrelated, right?
Exactly. Unrelated.
Yeah, exactly. I think you were telling me about that example of the barista, right? Where it's always so impressed in the way that they make people feel when they walk in. Now you're not. Maybe this is some sort of like sales role or somebody that's picking up the phones in the office. You're not literally going to go hire a barista, but that essence and that energy is what you're looking for, and that's what you build into the ideal candidate profile, and it's front and center for you. That's the energy you're looking for.
Exactly. And the words you choose are super important. So you wouldn't write the qualities awesome, because that's maybe not precise enough. Like, just to be clear, we talked about it in terms of values and adding definitions. So, maybe it's customer service skills, and then you really break it down into what it means.
Yeah, exactly. And guys, I don't know if some people listening might be thinking, well, this sounds a little bit hokey, like you're sort of envisioning somebody or you're thinking about this barista, but there truly is something about being really clear in your mind about what you're set out to go find. It does, when you're clear on it, that will become baked in the next steps of the recruitment process, which we'll talk about in this series. And it will help you so much when you're actually making that pick amongst the candidates that are in front of you. So some people say, well, you speak it to the universe and it'll bring it to you. I would argue that there is a practical element that's also at work here, which is like, when you're clear on it, you will naturally bake it into all the steps, and that's how the universe.
Whether we want to explain this through like mysticism or practical steps, it doesn't matter. I can say for sure, I've seen a lot of our contractors do this, and then 2 weeks later they're like, "Holy crap, I can't believe it!" But like, we made this profile, and all of a sudden, we like the perfect person applied through our add-on, whatever. It's like it does happen
so many
like
times.
That. It does happen like that.
And it's happened because you are naturally going to go build it in. So Benji, just to recap, so ideal candidate profile, the sections of it, they are going to be in the downloads, but it's number 1, values. Number 2,
mission and why.
3,
your what do we say? Deliverables and accountabilities.
Yeah. Number 4,
preferences and abilities.
5,
It's written down here. Skill set and experience, and then your profile based on past employees.
Yeah. So there's 6 components.
I want to be clear that this will be available as a fill in the blanks template.
Yeah.
That will be in a link in the description. You can go through. This is very plug and play. It's kind of built to save you a bunch of time, make it very, very take away a lot of the guesswork. If you've never built one of these before and you don't want to stare at a blank Word document like I hate doing, just download it. It'll save you a ton of headaches.
Yeah.
So,
and again, it's not like, don't look at this as some massive daunting process. This is a couple hours that you're going to add to the beginning, the planning stages of a recruitment process that's going to pay back in dividends. And just on that note, Benji, this is one thing actually we didn't get a chance to ask Josie yet. I would love to hear, like, I'm sure you've seen examples where a business leader, an organization just hasn't done this and it's really hurt them. Like, what do you see typically happen if somebody doesn't do this?
Yeah, well, things can go sideways pretty quickly. And so I'm thinking of a CEO who needed a replacement for an executive assistant. So sometimes you think, I'm not going to ask myself any questions. I need an EA. So I'm just going to do the posting for an EA. Exactly. I've had one for 20 years. So, I need a new one. And so not doing the exercise, especially when it was for him a position that had been filled for a long period of time. So obviously he was very close to the previous person and ended up hiring someone who was lovely, but just didn't have a good grasp of what was needed in this role. So we're talking about someone who was extremely disorganized, mountains of papers, no filing system. And when this poor person came into the role, she was a little bit taken aback by what the state of the affairs was. And then, it did not work out. Obviously, she did not have the organizational skills to put this in place. She didn't have, what it took to really help him. And this person did not stay. They were enrolled for a month and then ended up moving on, which is very costly for a company. You put in so much efforts in the recruitment process. There's the time associated to people involved. And then, you have to start again from scratch.
Totally. Where this CEO didn't take the time to, and wasn't probably real with himself of like, what am I good at? What am I not? What do I need in this ideal candidate to make this role successful? Completely skip this step, and that's the result.
Hurts your employee brand, costs a bunch of money, wastes a bunch of time. Don't skip the 3 hours it takes to write one of these.
And make it fun, right? You can go for coffee, bring a couple of team members and do that and have fun with it.
Yeah.
I want to just share with the audience something that we're gonna make available in the description. There'll be a link in the description to download this. So we've talked about these sort of 5 parts of an ideal candidate profile. We've spoken about some best practices to go about making one. If you'd like to see a super exemplary ideal candidate profile that's been written by a contractor for a specific role, there's 2 of them. I got to shout out Connor Jones with Midcon Exteriors. He's a Breakthrough Academy member, and he has sent me 2 of his. One is for a roofing supervisor and service technician. The other one is for a production coordinator. They're perfectly written. Go through these on your own time. It'll take you 10 minutes. It will really sort of fill in, add some color to the stuff we've been talking about here for the last little bit. And it's all very, very sort of construction and trades focused. I'm just going to go over really quickly this roofing supervisor and service technician role that he's built. So right on the top, he's got the mission and the why, right? The repair technician role is a key part of fulfillment of the promises we make to our customers. The company's brand and customer experience rely on the proper execution of the responsibilities of this role. I won't read through the whole paragraph, but there's a very, very clear why there. He's not unclear on the mission of this position. He's got 5 deliverables. So deliverable 1, manage job sites to ensure exceptional customer experience and control the quality of the install. And then he has all the accountabilities listed below that. So deliverable 2, complete quality repairs. Deliverable 3, complete quality punch out and warranty repairs. Deliverable 4, provide construction technical support to the rest of the team. And then number 5, maintain an average of a 4.8 out of 5 quality score. This is through Google, by taking overall responsibility for customer experience and ensuring they are exceptionally satisfied. So, he's clear on the results he wants this person to achieve when they get hired. He's thought through his preferences and abilities. So for this roofing supervisor and service technician, this person needs to be a good problem solver. So that's something he's identified. They need to have tenacity. So very, very high work ethic, overcoming challenges through pure hard work. They need to have a certain level of precision. So that's attention to detail. And then it needs to have a certain level of instrumental. That's how do you come off as competent? Do you come off as presentable to customers? Because this is a client-facing position. He's got his skill sets and experience needed outlined. And he actually has done some interviews with past employees and figured out what made them really strong. So this is, I would say, a 10 out of 10 example. If you want to see what good looks like, check out the link in the description. You can download this. You can download the fill in the blanks template to make your own. And you can download the preferences and abilities definition. So that's a pretty robust package of goodies just for listening. We really want you to take what we're talking about and actually do something with it. So,
and Benji, one thing I want to highlight there, right? One of the examples that you referred to, there's the project coordinator. All of these roles can be interpreted in such different ways.
Very
so like
different
what
ways.
You're saying, just because you know that one of your buddies has a project coordinator,
Right,
or your competitor has an assistant that supports him or whatever, they all mean such different things. You have to take the time to understand it yourself. And we see contractors make these mistakes so often, especially actually I would say in a lot of office roles. Benji, you see this a ton in assessments, right? There's a huge difference between like an office admin and a bookkeeper and an office manager. You got to think like, you got to sit down, grab a coffee, think through, what does my organization need at this stage? And also, like, you have to have some baseline level of understanding of what actually goes on, right? A lot of contractors, office functions, again, are a great example. You just have no clue what's actually happening in there. And you're so susceptible to making a mistake in the hiring process. One, you have no idea how much work it actually takes. You probably often underestimate it. You don't understand what natural preferences and abilities are needed, what skill sets are needed coming in. You're kind of like ripe for walking into a minefield, right?
Yeah.
So you have to have a baseline understanding of what's up before you go build something like this.
The title is actually somewhat arbitrary. Totally. That's just the name you give it.
Just the name you happen to give it.
What
totally.
really matters is the work done behind it, and that is what's summarized in the ideal candidate profile. I want to end on this question, guys. If a listener, takes those examples, takes the downloadable template, they build one of these, how can they expect the rest of their hiring process to improve? Can you kind of connect this to some of the other steps in the overall funnel that we'll talk about in other episodes? Like how does this make the rest of it better and easier?
It just sets you up for success for the rest of the steps. So it's almost like, putting your favorite song and going for a run, right? You do it effortlessly because it kind of numbs the pain for everything else that's to come. So basically, you have that level of clarity of what it is that you're looking for. So it's going to make your resume screening much easier. Your interview questions will be targeted in ensuring that you measure what you want to measure. And then you'll be able to speak about the role in a very informed fashion, because we have to remember that candidates are interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing them, and then you have your chance of making the right selection and onboarding someone who's going to stay with you for a long term. So it increases longevity for someone to join your business.
I love it. Josianne, where can people find out a little bit more about you and what you do?
Well, you can find me either on LinkedIn or at crewhr.co, and you'll find out all of the information about what I do and a little bit more about my profile.
Amazing. Let's leave it at that, guys. Before we close, I just want to explain to you what we're going to do in the next episode of this Ultimate Hiring Funnel series. We've talked today about ideal candidate profiles. The next step is to take this and turn it into a perfectly written job posting that actually sells the candidate into wanting to work for you, with you. If you've ever posted something online and then just sat there and saw nobody apply, it's a very depressing feeling and certainly not very productive. So if you want to learn how to write super captivating job postings that people read top to bottom, they click apply and they don't move on to the next ad, that's what we're going to be talking about in the next session. And we're excited to have Josianne back for that.
Yeah, most job postings suck, and we're going to teach you how to make one that does not
suck.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks so much for watching this episode of Contractor Evolution. If you've already subscribed to our channel, consider sharing this episode with another contractor who you think needs to hear it.